You know, I was sitting with a group of people the other day, and someone asked me, Jim, what's the one thing that changes everything? I thought about all the years studying success and failure, and I came to a simple conclusion. It's discipline. Now, that's not sexy. That's not the answer people want to hear. They want luck, connections, the perfect opportunity. But here's what I've learned. Jot this down. Discipline is the bridge between who you are today and who you could become tomorrow. See, most people don't fear their enemies. Most people don't fear failure. But you know what people should fear? Their own potential. That's right, their own potential. Think about that for a moment. Most people live their entire lives without ever coming close to what they're actually capable of doing. We're like a reservoir that's never opened. We're like a seed that was planted but never watered. And the tragedy isn't that we don't have the capacity, it's that we don't have the discipline to develop it. Here's the key. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not suffering. Discipline is a gift you give yourself. It's the investment that pays the highest return. It's the one thing that stands between you and the person you were meant to become. When I was coming up, I didn't have much. I was working at Sears, making a small wage, and I was desperate. My mentor was a man named Mr. Showoff. He was successful, and I watched him like a hawk. You know what separated him from hundreds of other people I knew? It wasn't his education or background. What separated Mr. Showoff was that he was disciplined every single day. He would wake up at a certain time. He would spend time on himself before the day got crazy. He would read. He would think. He would plan. And he would do the things that people who aren't disciplined won't do, so that one day he could have the things that people who aren't disciplined can't have. Now here's the next one. Most people are waiting for life to move them. They're waiting for circumstances to change. They're waiting for someone to give them permission. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline acts. Discipline says, I'm going to do what needs to be done regardless of how I feel. That's the beginning of becoming dangerous. And I don't mean dangerous like a criminal. I mean dangerous in the best sense of the word. Dangerous to poverty. Dangerous to mediocrity. Dangerous to the plans that life has for those who accept whatever comes their way. Here's what I learned that changed my life. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is not as big as you think. It's not impossible. What it takes is daily discipline. Small decisions made consistently over time. Small actions that compound until one day you're a completely different person. Think about a tree. A tree doesn't grow 100 feet in one day. It grows every single day. A tiny bit of growth. Year after year, the tree keeps growing. And then one day, that tree is a giant. That tree has roots that run deep. That tree can weather storms that would snap smaller trees in half. But here's what most people do. They plant the tree and expect instant results. Or they plant it and neglect it. They don't water it. They don't tend to it. And then they wonder why it never becomes what it could have been. Discipline is the water. Discipline is the sun and the soil. Discipline is the tender care that allows potential to become reality. Now, I'm going to tell you something that might sting a little. The potential that's inside you right now is probably scary. You haven't thought about it that way, have you? But if you really looked at what you're capable of, if you really let yourself imagine the heights you could reach, the money you could make, the impact you could have, it would scare you half to death. And that's exactly where you need to be. See, most people are comfortable with not quite reaching their potential. Why? Because reaching your potential requires discipline. It requires you to say no to things. It requires you to wake up when you don't feel like it. It requires you to do the work when no one's watching. Jot this down. Discipline is the price of freedom. Financial freedom, time freedom, the freedom to live according to your own values, the freedom to build something meaningful, the freedom to be proud of who you are. But you can't have that freedom unless you're willing to pay the price. And the price is discipline. Here's what's interesting about discipline. It doesn't feel good when you're starting out. It feels restrictive. It feels difficult. But here's the magic. After a while, discipline becomes a habit. After a while, the hard becomes easy. After a while, doing the right thing requires less willpower because you've trained your mind and your body. I remember a time when I was struggling with my health. I was overweight, I was tired all the time, I was eating wrong, and I was miserable. Then one day I realized something. I had the discipline to build a successful business. I had the discipline to master sales, but I didn't have the discipline to take care of my own body. So I made a decision. I was going to apply the same discipline I used in business to my health. And let me tell you, it changed everything. Once I started disciplining myself in one area, it spilled over into every other area. I started disciplining myself in my relationships. I started disciplining myself in my thinking. I started disciplining myself in how I spent my time and money. And the results compounded. That's the thing about discipline that most people don't understand. Discipline in one area creates a foundation for discipline in all areas. When you finally prove to yourself that you can do something hard, when you finally prove to yourself that you can stick with something, something shifts inside you. Fear goes away. The fear of being incapable. The fear of not having what it takes. The fear that you're destined to be average. Here's the next one. Most people underestimate what they can do in a year, but they overestimate what they can do in a day. So they get discouraged. They try something for 3 weeks and don't see results and quit. They never make it to the compound effect. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine someone who decides to read for just 30 minutes a day. What happens in one day? Nothing. What happens in 1 year? That person will have read roughly 20 books. In 2 years, they'll have read 40. In 5 years, 80. In a decade, over 150 books. Now imagine someone else watching television instead. In 10 years, what's the difference between these two people? It's not just knowledge, it's wisdom, it's perspective. It's the kind of person they've become. That's the power of discipline. That's the magic of small, consistent daily actions. Now, let me talk about the gap between what you are and what you could be. That gap exists, and it's significant. Deep down, in your quiet moments, you know that you're capable of more than what you're currently producing. You know you could take better care of your body. You know you could be a better parent, a better friend, a better partner. The question is, what are you going to do about that gap? Some people try to ignore it. They convince themselves they're fine just the way they are. But you can't ignore it forever. That gap has a way of nagging at you. It whispers to you late at night. It shows up in moments of quiet reflection. Other people acknowledge the gap, but they're paralyzed by it. They think the gap is too big. I've wasted too much time. I'll never catch up. So they give up before they start. But here's what I want to tell you. The gap closes one day at a time. It closes through discipline. It closes through the commitment to do one thing today that moves you closer to who you want to be. Jot this down. The gap between your current self and your potential self is not a chasm, it's a path. And the path is paved with small, daily decisions made with discipline. You know what stops most people? Impatience. They want to see big results immediately. They want to jump 10 steps ahead without climbing the first 9. But that's not how life works. That's not how growth works. Everything that's worth having requires a process, and the process requires discipline. Think about a farmer. A farmer doesn't plant a seed and demand a harvest the next week. A farmer knows the seasons. There's a time for planting, then a long time of tending, watering, pulling weeds. Only after that time has been invested does the harvest come. And when it does, it comes abundantly because of what was put in beforehand. Most people want to skip the seasons. They want to plant and immediately harvest. They don't want to do the tending. They don't want to show up day after day when they could be doing something else. But that's not how it works. Here's the key. Discipline is doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Not sometimes, not when you're motivated, but consistently, every single day. Now, I want to talk about fear again. I said you should fear your own potential. What I really mean is this. Most people are more comfortable with their limitations than they are with their possibilities. Let me say that again. Most people are more comfortable with their limitations than they are with their possibilities. Why? Because limitations are safe. Limitations are predictable. If you've decided, I'm just not a disciplined person, you don't have to actually become disciplined. You've given yourself permission to stay where you are. But possibilities are terrifying. Possibilities demand work. Possibilities require you to stretch. Possibilities require you to become someone different than who you've always been. But here's the truth. The fear of reaching your potential should be greater than the fear of not reaching it. The fear of becoming all that you could be should be greater than the fear of wasting your life. The fear of living at your full power should be greater than the fear of living small. When you finally get there, and you will if you discipline yourself, you're going to look back and ask yourself, what took me so long? Why did I waste so much time being afraid when I could have been building, growing, becoming? Here's what I learned. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to wait until you feel ready. You don't have to wait until everything's in place. You just have to start. You just have to apply discipline today, and then again tomorrow, and then again the day after that. That's it. Now, let me talk about the layers of potential. Most people have more potential than they think. They don't have just one layer. They have many layers. There's the potential you know about. There's the potential you suspect. And then there's the potential you haven't even imagined yet. Most people only mind the first layer. They develop just enough to get by. They make enough to pay the bills. They stay healthy enough to avoid serious problems. But they never dig deeper. They never discover what's in the next layer. Here's the next one. Discipline is the key that opens every layer. Discipline in your health reveals energy and vitality you didn't know you had. Discipline in learning reveals new capability and opportunity. Discipline in finances reveals freedom. Discipline in relationships reveals love and connection. Each layer builds on the previous one. Each layer opens new possibilities you couldn't see from where you were standing before. I remember meeting a man who had been overweight most of his life, over 300 pounds. His doctor warned him, his family worried, but nothing clicked. Then one day, something shifted. He decided he was going to get disciplined about his health, not because he wanted to look better, but because he wanted to reclaim his life. He started small, a walk around the block every single day. Then the next week, he added a little more. The week after that, a little more. He changed what he ate. Not all at once, but with consistency, with discipline. A year later, he had lost over 100 pounds. But here's what was really interesting. He didn't just change his body, he changed his mind. He changed his relationships. He changed his career. Why? Because once he proved to himself that he could do something hard, he applied that same discipline to every area of his life. That's the compounding power of discipline. You see, discipline doesn't just change one thing. Discipline changes everything. Because discipline requires you to believe in yourself. Discipline requires you to see yourself as someone capable of growth and change. Discipline requires you to see yourself as someone who keeps their word, especially the word they give to themselves. And once you see yourself that way, everything shifts. Jot this down. You are not the person you were a year ago. You're not going to be the same person a year from now. The question is, are you going to change by accident or by design? Are you going to let circumstance shape you or shape yourself through discipline? Here's what most people don't understand about potential. Potential is not a gift that arrives fully formed. It's a possibility. It's a seed. It requires development. It requires cultivation. It requires you to show up and do the work that very few people are willing to do. Most people have the potential to be excellent. Most people have the potential to be successful. Most people have the potential to impact others meaningfully. But they never explore that potential because they don't have the discipline to start, and more importantly, they don't have the discipline to continue. Here's the key. Discipline is not something you either have or don't have. Discipline is a skill. Like any skill, it can be developed, it can be strengthened, it can be trained. Every time you do something you don't feel like doing, you're building discipline. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you're building discipline. Every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you're building discipline. And over time, discipline becomes part of who you are. It becomes automatic. It becomes the way you operate. Now, here's what I want you to consider. What if you became dangerous in the best sense of the word? What if you became someone who couldn't be stopped? What if you became someone with such discipline that you don't just accomplish your own goals, you inspire others to accomplish theirs? That's not some far-off fantasy. That's real. That's possible. That's what happens when you finally decide you're going to discipline yourself, that you're going to reach for your potential, that you're going to find out what you're made of. Let me tell you something about life. Life is not judging you for the effort. Life measures you by what you produce. Life looks at what you've become. Life looks at what you've built. And those things are the direct result of discipline. You can't discipline yourself part-time. You can't discipline yourself on Mondays, but not on Saturdays. Discipline is a commitment. It's a decision. It's a way of being. Here's the next one. Your potential is not your responsibility. But developing your potential, actualizing your potential, living your potential, that's your responsibility. That's your job. That's what you're here to do. Nobody can do it for you. No amount of luck can do it for you. No amount of talent can do it for you. Only discipline can do it for you. Think about it this way. If you had a diamond buried in the ground and you knew that diamond was inside you, would you leave it there? Would you just walk around knowing you had a fortune buried inside you and do nothing about it? Of course not. You'd dig, you'd work, you'd show up every single day. That's what discipline is. It's the shovel. It's the willingness to dig. It's the commitment to keep digging until you find the treasure inside you. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get specific. I don't want you to say, I'm going to discipline myself. That's too vague. I want you to pick one area where you know you have untapped potential. Is it your health? Is it your wealth? Is it your relationships? Is it your mind? Pick one, just one to start, and then decide what one thing you're going to do every single day in that area. Just one thing. Something small, something achievable, something you can commit to. And then do it every day. Not most days, every day. And watch what happens. Watch how that one small decision, repeated consistently, begins to transform that area. Watch how that transformation begins to influence every other area. Jot this down. The compound effect of small, daily discipline over time is unstoppable. It's more powerful than luck. It's more powerful than connections. It's more powerful than talent. It's the raw power of showing up and doing the work. Here's the truth I wish someone had told me when I was younger. The person you want to become, that person is possible. That person is real. That person exists in a potential state right now. And the only thing standing between you and who you could become is discipline. Not time, not opportunity, not circumstance, not resources. Discipline. That's it. And here's the beautiful part. You have discipline. You have it right now. You've demonstrated it in other areas of your life. Maybe not in the area where you want to grow most, but you've got it somewhere. Don't tell me you're not a disciplined person. What you really mean is that you haven't decided yet. You haven't chosen yet. You haven't committed yet. But when you do, when you finally make that decision and that commitment, everything changes. You stop being afraid of your potential. You start to fear not reaching it. You start to think about all the time you could waste if you don't get started. You start to think about the person you could be if you just applied the discipline you're capable of applying. And that fear, that productive fear, becomes your fuel. Here's what I learned. Fear is not your enemy. False hope is your enemy. Comfort is your enemy. The belief that you have unlimited time is your enemy. But fear of wasting your potential, fear of not becoming who you could be, fear of reaching the end of your life with regret, that fear is your friend. That fear is your motivator. Let that fear drive you. Let that fear push you to become disciplined. Let that fear remind you every morning that this is the day. This is the moment. This is when you start becoming who you're meant to be. Here's the next one. Most people are waiting for inspiration to strike, but that moment is never coming. Inspiration is not something that happens to you. Inspiration is something you create through action. You don't get inspired and then act. You act and then you get inspired. You show up and do the work and then you see the results and then you get inspired to do more work. It's the doing that creates the believing. So don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start now, today, right now. Pick that one area. Pick that one small daily discipline and begin. Once you start, once you actually commit and show up and do the work, your entire perspective shifts. Your potential stops being scary and starts being exciting. Your future stops being uncertain and becomes filled with possibility. That's the power of discipline. And here's the beautiful truth. As you discipline yourself in one area, as you see the results compound, as you watch yourself transform, you're going to want to apply that discipline to other areas. You're going to realize that discipline is not restriction. Discipline is freedom. Discipline is the vehicle that takes you from where you are to where you want to be. So I'm going to challenge you with this. Fear your own potential. Look at the gap between who you are and who you could be, and instead of being discouraged, be energized. That gap is not a problem. That gap is an opportunity. That gap is calling you to become something more. And the answer to that call is discipline. Jot this down. You have untapped potential, layers and layers of it, and discipline is the only key that opens those layers. Not talent, not luck, not connections, discipline. Start today. Start with one thing. Start with one area. Start with one small daily commitment. And then watch what happens. Watch how you begin to change. Watch how others notice the change. Watch how opportunities you never had suddenly appear. Watch how you begin to access the potential that was always there, waiting to be developed. That's the real magic. That's the real power. That's what happens when you finally discipline yourself. And one day, maybe a year from now, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10, you're going to look back and be shocked. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be grateful that you finally decided to fear your own potential enough to actually develop it. That's when you'll understand. Discipline is not just about what you accomplish. Discipline is about who you become. And who you become is everything.